everybody, like in our sort of age demographic, has got a Blue Note story. You know, like there's very, very few people, especially in the music industry in this city, that doesn't have a story about a night they partied at the Blue Note, which is really neat. And it sort of lives on to this day. Like, you know, people still talk about it. When the Blue Note closed, it was kind of funny because the guy that owned the building called me and he was kind of mad that I got the sign. And I said, oh, well, I actually bought it off of somebody. And he's like, oh, really? Who? So anyways, we talked about it, and he said, you know what? Because you got it and it's going to the Neon Factory, he goes, I'm just glad that you have it and you'll save it, eh?
When it started out, it was just a great place for all these bands who were rehearsing, didn't have a whole night's worth of material, or they just wanted to get up and do a couple of songs on stage or something like that. They would just kind of go and they'd rock the place out. So, I mean, I was there right before it started, and I remember talking to Curtis and wondering, well, is this guy for real? I mean, I didn't know Curtis at the time, and you know, is this guy for real? Is he really going to do this? And it was a great vision.
Well, I didn't really have that much of a vision, to tell you the truth. You know, the idea was just to, in fact, I really didn't know that there was that much of a culture going on downtown. I kind of was a St. James Salisbury House guy.
And next thing you know, he had it up and running, and before you know it, like, it didn't take very long, I don't think, probably within weeks, and the place was packed every night, mostly with musicians, right? Because it was a place to go if you didn't have a gig, and if you had a gig, right after you finished, you'd go there and you'd hang out and you'd play.
There was a time where if I wasn't out of town, every night I would stop at the Blue Note before I went home. 7 days a week for years in a row, you know? So it was kind of like, it turned into a home more than anything.
I began seeing Curtis around that time. We actually met at the Blue Note. I came in as a customer. But that was the kind of place it was. Like, yeah, you'd always have waiters sitting down, chatting with customers, and you always felt right at home. And so that's how Curtis and I met.
You know, our capacity was 65 people, and there'd be, you know, at 2:30 in the morning, there'd be 110 or 120 people. The restaurant would become so full that what I would do is I'd take the lineup and I'd put them out here in the back and we'd serve them in the summertime.
Well, the back door was the spot. If you were a regular, you never walked in the front door of the Blue Note Cafe. There was parking, you whipped in the back, you saw your friends, walked through the hallway. Every table had one of those old red candles with a glass red candle on it. Very dark, very moody, stuff like that, but it was very small.
It was lined up out the sidewalk after 2 weeks, and it was lined up from then on in for 15 years. It never had a slow period at all. And in that time period, if we're thinking of statistics, we put 1,000 shows a year on for 15 years in a row.
We'd see like all these players that we just don't normally have a chance to hang with. We just don't normally have a chance to go and play with people. And that was Curtis's idea as well. I mean, you got to give him credit. His idea was that we could have all these different musicians and all these different bands that could come and hang out here, and it would be late night, but we could jam together, which is awesome, right? To be able to go and play with people that you only know from playing with other bands. So I think that his idea, right, was to provide that opportunity, but at the same point in time, look for some real musical moments. And I gotta tell you, man, there were some nights that place was on fire.
So the night Rod Stewart's band came in, when their tour buses pulled up out front, and Rod Stewart's band came in, Rod went and sat in a booth, his band went up on stage and played, and Curtis busked for him. It was a pretty amazing thing. So they're coming from the arena show, and here's Curtis giving them 35 bucks in $2 bills back then, and stuff. So they got a pretty big kick out of that.
Ray Charles was in town, And Curtis called me at home and said, look, the Ray Charles band is coming down here, and you know, do you want to come in and sit in with them because they're looking for a drummer? So it's like, let me think about that. Zoom, out the door, right? Next thing I know, here I am, I'm on stage at the Blue Note, right? This tiny little stage with like 10 guys from the Ray Charles band, and we're playing jazz standards, but still, it was, you know, wow, I'm playing with these real cool cats, and this is a really neat thing to be doing at 2 o'clock in the morning.
But you know, Guns N' Roses played here, and Neil Young played here, and the David Bowie band, and Tina Turner, and you know, guys like Long John Baldry and Powder Blues, all the people from Chicago, all your Gatemouth Browns and your Lonnie Brookses and your James Cottons, and then guys like Johnny Winters. And oddly enough, I had dinner with Edgar Winter. I'm probably one of the few guys that actually has friends with both brothers.
For me, my personal best night was the night Johnny Winter was in. Actually, it was spread out over a couple of nights. It was a week overdue at that time. And he came in, and you know, of course, all the blues players in towns were all you know, hovering around him, but for some reason he seemed to be taken with my my big belly, my state of pregnancy, and that's all he wanted to talk about. And he told me that he remembered that when his wife was pregnant and she was past due, that she swore by drinking raspberry tea. That's what brought on the labor. So then sure enough, the next day, he sent one of his roadies over. He sent out one of his roadies to find some raspberry tea somewhere and sent it over for me at the restaurant. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll give it a whirl. I tried it, and sure enough, that night, I went into labor.
It was a special thing, you know. It was one of those things that eventually has a time limit. It's so great, it's so fantastic that it can't, and obviously couldn't last forever.
And you can tell by the back of it, shoot the back of it, this is how it looked the day I left it, right? This doesn't look any different, you know? I grew to hate it. I grew to hate the Blue Note, everybody knows that. It was so busy all the time. It was just unbelievable trying to operate it.
I've been in other towns where they all have sort of their cool hangout, but I don't think I've ever been to one that has been as cool as what the Blue Note was in its time. You know, like you go places and they say, yeah, people hang out here. But I mean, you know, the Blue Note, it closed when you couldn't stand up anymore.